Better Buildings for Humans is powered by Advanced Glazings, makers of the Solera line of products. Solera is the leading glass glazing made specifically for architectural daylighting and with extreme insulation performance. Learn more at advancedglazings.com. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Better Buildings for Humans. I'm your host, Joe Menchefski, and this is the podcast where we take a look at the impact that the built environment has on our health, our wellness, our productivity, our general joy of being alive. And of course, we always talk about sustainable design as well. Today, I have Roberto Vega Peralta from Vocon with us today. Roberto, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, okay, so let's start by getting to know you a little bit better. Tell us why you decided to become an architect, and then tell us about the path in your career that led you to becoming the new sustainability director. And congratulations, the path that led you to become the new sustainability director with Vocon.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to be here, and it's a long journey. I'm not that old, but the world has taken me all over. I've been incredibly blessed. I was born and raised in Costa Rica, so being from a true paradise in terms of natural wealth and beauty in the natural world, I think that most Costa Ricans have it in their blood, like it's in our bones, like the love of nature and sustainability, even though we'll unpack that term because it's such a big, broad topic and term. But the love of nature has certainly been just in me since I was born and probably generations before me. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to visit, but
35 years ago I did. I've been to San Jose and I've been to the Guanacaste province.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah. It's great that you went there a while back because there's less tourism back then and it was a little bit more raw and unfiltered.
It was.
There are still places in Costa Rica that are like that, but a lot of them have become, very touristy. That notwithstanding, I believe there's a report from Harvard a while back in tandem with the National Geographic Society. I think that there's a corner of the country that has a significant percent of the planet's biodiversity. And it's just a little peninsula, the Peninsula de Osa, which is one of my favorite places in the country. But at any rate, I started out my life there. I was incredibly blessed to be born and raised there. And at the age of 19, I came to the States for school. And that's where my trajectory took off. Architecture is a very interesting field in that, I started out in art school thinking I wanted to be an animator or an artist or this or that. I had just a lot of interests. And the cool thing about architecture is that it allows me to blend and take in all the aspects and fascinating aspects of my life: science, technology, art, design, history, current events, society, and just kind of throw them all in a blender and be a good steward of culture, of society, of your community. And so the path kind of naturally led me to architecture. And after that, I was incredibly blessed and lucky. I graduated with my master's in architecture with a specialty in sustainability in '08. If you recall, that was when the financial crisis hit and nobody could land the job. And I was, again, incredibly blessed. I'm just a lucky guy. I've had incredibly lucky break after lucky break. I was one of the few to land a job and at the same time be able to stay in the country, because if you're familiar with people who are not American citizens, I was Costa Rican. And so in order to stay in the country, you have to be sponsored, right? It's like what they used to call an OPT, like an optional practical training. So again, incredibly blessed. I got a job all the way on the other side of the country. I did my schooling in Savannah, Georgia, in Savannah College of Art and Design. And then again, incredibly blessed to get this job at NBBJ in Seattle, completely the other side of the country. And so everything was new for me. I just started off fresh, and my career has always been focused on sustainability. And from Seattle, I went to San Francisco. And from San Francisco, I went to India for a short span. And then after India, I went to LA. And then after LA to Chicago, I went back to San Francisco, which is where I spent most of my career. And then out to Pittsburgh. And then from Pittsburgh to Oregon. And then Oregon to Cleveland, where I am now, where I am to the present moment. I am a practice director here at Vocon for the architecture department. So it's been a wild journey, but always focused on sustainability. And we can unpack a little bit more about how I got there, but it's a long answer to tell you how I got here.
No, it's a great answer. It's interesting. You alluded to something in there, or you spoke a little bit about, how architecture is at the crossroads of so many interesting individual areas of study. You've got art, you've got science, you've got, technology, you've got neuroscience now, you've got sociology, anthropology, like all of those things come together in architecture, which is one of the reasons I think it's just such an amazing world and why I spend so much time in it. Let's talk about your new role at Vocon. Why does the organization, the firm need a sustainability director? And what's your role there? What are you bringing to them, Roberto, that they need?
I've been incredibly blessed I started out as a practice leader here at Vocon a little over a year ago. And I brought my emphasis and passion for sustainability very much kind of comes with me. It's kind of a package deal. You can't remove the sustainability from me. It's kind of like taking the O from the O2 in oxygen. So you can't really do that. And so in doing so, I think Vocon was very strategic about hiring me. And I think they knew what they wanted to accomplish by hiring me because they knew that was in their DNA and it was something that they wanted to cultivate. So in hiring me, they waited out that first year to see how things would be cohese with me. And what ended up happening is that I found all of these talented and passionate individuals within the organization that have been kind of quietly working towards sustainability goals. And we kind of just all coalesced and became a group and became a pretty strong force inside of the office. And so sure enough, the next year, they kind of recognized that and saw that there is enough strength and momentum to have a sustainability practice and a sustainability emerging discipline. And in doing so, then I was the director of the sustainability practice, or the emerging discipline, as we call it. But really, all it is trying to collect and organize all of the passionate individuals and interests that are ongoing in the firm and trying to strengthen those through a couple of different avenues so that we can all maximize our efforts. And it's not like, too little butter over too much bread, but it's more focused. And so to that effect, we have created a strategic plan. We have a 5, 10, and a 25-year plan, but we also have a 12-month plan, which is very concrete. So we can unpack that a little bit more. We are focusing on our marketing language, our specifications development, both for interior and exterior. And very importantly, near and dear to my heart, is performance. So we're working really hard to track performance on all projects, from EUI or energy use intensity to carbon tracking, embodied carbon. And those are the main kind of benchmarks that we're trying to hold all of our projects up to better understand where we've been, where we are, and where we're going in the future. So, again, great recognition to the people here at Vocon who have been doing a ton of work already. And now it's just time to take it to the next level. And to be quite frank, to the sophisticated clients that come in through this office and in the New York office and here in the Cleveland office and beyond, they are expecting this. It's not just like we want to bring this to the clients. The clients are oftentimes bringing it to us, which is amazing. It's a great place to be because it really makes us scramble and ensure that we're actually have the expertise, that we're bringing it, and that we're talking the same language with our clients. So net zero, energy ready world of project delivery is really very much here, and a lot of our clients are demanding it. So we're thrilled about that.
Manage the connection between building occupants and the outside world using Solera translucent glass. Learn more at advancedglazings.com. Just for fun, purely for fun, do you ever have clients that say, yeah, I don't want any of that sustainability crap, you could just leave that over here? You ever run into that?
Oh, never. No,
Okay.
Have that. No, it's just tongue in cheek. It happens all the time.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Cleveland, Ohio. So, this, to be perfectly frank with you, pardon my ignorance, but I could barely make out the Midwest on a map, on a mental map, because I'd spent most of my professional life, either on the East or the West Coast, and a little bit of time in Chicago. So I could barely place the Ohio region on a map. And now that I'm here, there's a lot of stereotypes, the flyover country and this and that. But it couldn't be farther from the truth, like places like Pittsburgh and Cleveland, the city where I live and reside now and practice, they are undergoing a bit of a resurgence. And this is no secret. It's been out for years now that these cities, these kind of what are labeled like as second-tier cities, are really poised for a revolution in performance, in manufacturing, in data centers with AI coming. There's so much happening here. And there are so many interesting developments happening here that, the big elitist like coasts, which is, granted where I've spent most of my life. And I mean, most of my professional career was in San Francisco, and I absolutely loved it. It's a dream of a place, but at the same time, it has a certain dystopian feel in that it kind of lost its grip on like a balanced take on life. I appreciate and love the Midwest for how centered it is and how focused it is on reality. And oftentimes in these like coastal places, which are again absolutely beautiful, and I've loved my time living there, and the people and everything about it, they often tend to have a very extreme view that may not be like gripped on reality as it pertains to the whole nation and the planet, but it's very one-sided. So it's been really cool to come here and see that people want to roll up their sleeves out here and get work done, and it's really cool. It's really different. And candidly, I moved here for my family. My wife is from Cleveland, or from this region, and we met in San Francisco. And sure enough, as the stereotype goes, we had a kid, and then it was time to move closer to family. And it's been remarkable. It's been a huge surprise for me to see all the energy and everything that's going on. It's been a huge adjustment for me too, mentally, as a practice leader, to navigate all of these. Back to your question. Sorry, that was a super big segue or tangent, but back to your question. Most people don't care about sustainability. And sustainability is a much maligned term here in the Midwest because it's such a loaded term. Like, it has so many different angles and facets to it that there's a lot of greenwashing. Post 90s, you had this sustainability boom, and then all these people started just greenwashing and saying, oh, we're green. And so it got fastidious and exhaustive, to the general audience. And so a lot of people here, when they hear the word sustainability, they either hear more dollar signs, I'm not interested, I don't care, it's not real, it's fake. There's all these like associations to it. So my job is to really unpack that and really be able to help the client see how they will have much better performing buildings that last longer, that are more economically reasonable for the long-term strategy, and most importantly, much better for the humans, for the users, the people who will actually live and breathe in this building. And that's what we're centered on here. It's the humans, it's the community, it's the people. And so it's been really cool to see how clients are very receptive to that message, and it's a very different message from just sustainability, which is a catch-all term that is sadly has undergone like so many different iterations over time,
Yeah, oh, I do know.
I hope that makes sense. I mean, it's got a bit of a diet.
No, it makes perfect sense. Listen, that's kind of a nice lead into where I wanted to go next. And, when I look at some of your past work, and I'll say the San Francisco Parklets, and you were involved with the Embracing the Rise competition. Well, two of the things that stand out are that commitment to community engagement, which, is something that's near and dear to my heart for sure. And I love listening to architects talk about it, how they go about doing that. And then the environmental resilience, which is, part and parcel of almost everything that architects talk about these days. And you've got both of them happening. Now, how do you approach, and let's talk mechanics, how do you approach integrating public input and ecological considerations into architectural designs? How do you mesh the two?
That's a great question. And I'm glad you asked that, because it really does take me back to my early days in San Francisco, when, that's one of the beautiful things about that city, is that it's so creative and there's so much energy there that whenever anyone has an idea, it kind of just snowballs and people get behind it and the city gets behind it. And in the event of the Parklets, that was an amazing experience where, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the SF or the organization called, what is it, Parking Day. It's like a global annual movement. I think started in Europe somewhere, but at any rate, it was like a call to arms for metaphorical, for people to think about what it means to have a public right-of-way, right? And especially in the United States, the public right-of-way has been yielded mostly to automobiles, and to vehicular traffic. And the human has been kind of taken out of the equation. And it was a call to kind of reclaim a little bit more of a thinking for a human-based, like first principles. What does it mean to exist in the public right-of-way? And so with the Parklets, we use that Parking Day celebration that happens once a year to reclaim parking spots in strategic places across the city. And this was very grassroots. I mean, a lot of architecture firms and different design firms across the city participate in it. I helped kind of spearhead a team in the Perkins and Will office back then, which I still have a lot of good near and dear friends out there in that office and in that city. And we would just reclaim the space and then have little design charrettes on how to best maximize the space, how could it serve the businesses that it was right adjacent to. And then we would just have a grand old time like designing it, building it, having a picnic in the park. And it took off. Like the city noticed. And what ended up happening is that we helped the city of San Francisco codify this into their actual building code. And it was part of their lexicon for quite some time. I haven't followed up with them in a while, but the parklets became a vehicle that business owners could apply for to reclaim a little bit more of that public right of way and create more amenities for the general people visiting their businesses and, just walking along Market Street or what have you. So it was a pretty cool process. And then you talk about embracing the rise. That was an amazing competition that I was incredibly privileged to help lead and be a part of that team. Basically, you're talking about resilience and how, cities like New York and San Francisco are in peril. I mean, they really are. I mean, there is a situation where if we don't plan accordingly, I mean, you saw firms like the Bjarke Ingels firm doing this great work in the New York area for how to like mitigate the rising waters and the storms that happen there. And what we call that was embracing the rise. What we were thinking of was like, well, rather than put up like a giant wall in the city of San Francisco, that has this beautiful relationship with the ocean and with the water all around it, why don't we design or dream of what would it be to design with that coming and going tide and with those growing levels? So we designed these like floating buildings and these special inlets. We identified geography in the city that could take more water so that it would be kind of almost like received and embraced, and in doing so allow other places that are more populated to not be victims of that water level rise. So it was like, again, very grassroots. This is the kind of thing that when you're in your 20s and you're really young and you're working on an architecture firm, you're working really late into the night and your deadlines and your projects, and then the rest of the time you just use it to participate in fun competitions and things of that nature. And so a couple of colleagues and I, we just stay late and just dreaming up of what could this city do to embrace that rise rather than see it as a negative and design accordingly. So we envisioned a city that kind of did that. It was really fun. And then cool perk was that our project got this merit award and got like actually displayed in the Embarcadero, which if you're familiar with San Francisco, the Embarcadero is this beautiful historic building that, I felt such a sense of like joy and pride. I like called my parents, and it's like, look, this little kid from Costa Rica has his work up in Embarcadero. I felt like they had made it or something. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, really cool. Beautiful part of the world, too. Let's stay on Perkins and Will for just a minute, your role there. So there was a couple of initiatives that caught my eye, the Bike and Culture Group, and then you were involved with a waste management initiative as well. And it comes back to that sort of question about cross-disciplinary or cross-discipline efforts. So how do these interdisciplinary efforts influence the way that you design spaces that promote both sustainability and human well-being? And I know that's a mouthful, but you see where I'm coming from. Like, you've got multiple disciplines and multiple objectives that all need to be considered, and they all go into that big old pot that you have to manage.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Again, my time in Perkins was really fun. Again, probably back to my roots from being born and raised in Costa Rica. Composting was a huge part of a waste management strategy, that thinks more holistically about how we're disposing of our waste. So I was responsible and kind of really vocal back then in my 20s about like having composting at our firm. We can't be like this incredible sustainable firm if we need to be able to walk the talk. And so as an operations in the office, how are we going to institute and implement this? So we went out there, and that's another cool thing about living in San Francisco, is that there was this really cool startup business that was a farmer that was collecting the compost from different businesses and taking it out to the farms. And so, like, again, to your point, like, we connected with a community. We found entrepreneurial minds that were willing to take this on, and credit to the leadership at Perkins and Will, they were cheering us all down the way. And so talk about cross collaboration and collaboration with other disciplines. We had a great group of graphic designers and branding team that we worked together to develop all the signage and the language that went around it. And this was a while back, so it was before composting. Composting now is even like it's part of the law in the city of San Francisco, but this was before then. There was not that much awareness, and so we had to educate the public. We had to have the proper language, signage, separate the waste, demonstrate also why is it useful, why is it helpful, like how many tons of waste are getting diverted from the landfills in doing so. And so it was a great effort. And then with the culture team, I was also like the head of the culture team for a while there. It was a fun group. And one of the activities was looking at our carbon output as human individuals. So could we challenge people to walk to work, take transit to work, bike to work? And I'm a huge biker. I mean, I've biked to work and to class my whole life, except for now that I live here in Cleveland, where I have to, I have a wife and kids and a kid and another one on the way. So I have to like drive to the suburbs and stuff. So that's why I drive now, but I still love biking, and biking is a huge part, of my identity back then when I used to bike everywhere. And so it was easier for me to challenge people to bike because obviously I bike and lived close enough where I could bike to my little apartment in San Francisco and get back to work. And so we challenged other offices too. It was a cool way to engage the firm as a whole because we were challenging offices, in Houston and in LA. And it's like, what is the carbon score? How can we like challenge each other? And Chicago too. Like, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, very cool. You've had a really diverse background and you worked with some very prestigious firms. You're working with one right now with Vocon. For anybody who doesn't know Vocon, by the way, when I think of the name, I think of corporate America comes to Vocon to design their head offices. So, obviously a very prestigious firms. And you've worked across various sectors. Like the little bit of research I did, I got healthcare, science, technology, education, all of those things. How have you personally carried the principles of sustainable design and human-centric design across these various sectors? And I know you did that. You've talked about it a little bit. But when you move across different firms, different sectors, how do you continue to carry the torch through so many different scenarios and circumstances?
That's a great question. I embrace a culture of curiosity. I guess ever since I was a kid, I've been extremely curious. To my parents' dismay sometimes when I was that kid that just kept asking questions and wanted to understand how the world works and how the universe works.
I can relate.
So can my parents. Designers and architects are a lot like that. And so in doing so, I think it just was natural to me to think, well, it doesn't matter if we're designing a pen or a city. The approach is still the same. How can we make it better performing? How can it be the best it can be for the humans that are going to be, centered around that? And so really the focus doesn't change. What changes is everything about the actual project and how we can get there to that end. So whether it's science and technology, whether it's in higher ed or whether it's a fire station or a police station, like it doesn't really matter. What really matters is to think about the users, think about their lives, think about their daily lives. How do they live their life? How can we make their lives safer? In the case of the fire stations, the police stations, something really interesting happened where I ended up in these recent designs where we ended up getting challenged to design net zero energy ready fire stations and police stations and paramedic stations. And so we went down this rabbit hole of trauma-informed design. And I'm not sure how much you've learned about this, but it's fascinating to think about, these guys and gals are having a crazy high adrenaline experience that they get to come back to these places and they're completely depleted. And so what are the attributes or physical environment that you can design to make them feel welcome, to make them feel at home, to be able to replenish? And a lot of those teachings and learnings we've applied not only to those projects, but to projects beyond. You mentioned Vocon here. Vocon is famous, I guess, for, like you said, like designing a lot of the corporate interior environments for the Fortune 500 companies of the world. And at Vocon, one of the things I love is that I've been tasked with leading and helping lead the architecture discipline and the sustainability practice within it, which is more firm-wide. But what's been really cool to see is that, whether we're doing ground-up buildings or adaptive reuse buildings or interiors, the teammates are all thinking about the end user, like the human, like how can we make their lives better? So put yourself in their shoes, think about what it means to go through a day in the life of, and then think, if I was in their shoes, how would I like to have my life be awesome and clean air, clean materials? Like, what are moments of joy and fun that you can capture or take cues to make their lives, fun and enjoyable? So, that when you think about architecture and design from that lens, it doesn't matter what kind of project typology you get tasked with, you can always find those moments.
So let's stay on Vocon for a little bit. I know the company has to emphasize the value of relationships in design. You have to. You wouldn't get the clientele that you got if you didn't. So let's talk corporate culture for a little bit. And Vocon, how do the designers at Vocon build these relationships with their clients so that you really understand them?
Yeah, like I said, I joined Vocon a little over a year ago. So I'm still drinking from a fire hose.
Right.
But you have to give enormous credit to Debbie Donnelly, the founder and the heartbeat of this company. She really has set the tone for over 30 years to exactly what you were saying is a relationship driven operation here. The way that she has just embraced and dove right into developing these relationships and being able to build on them and have decades long relationships with these amazing organizations. She leads and everything else follows from that. Like she really does emphasize people first, clients first, your teammates first. Here in the organization, we all look out for each other. And so it's been really fun and inspiring and motivating, really, quite frankly, to see her leadership just permeate through everything. So, she'll show up and roll her sleeves up and get to work. She's pretty incredible that way. She reminds me a little bit of Art Gensler. When I used to work in the San Francisco office, he would just show up every now and then. And by this point, he was a legend. I mean, he had already made Gensler what Gensler is today. And so he would just show up. And I remember riding in the elevator and he would just jump on the elevator like, hey, hold the door. And this guy would shuffle in, and I was like, who is this guy? And then somebody told me later, that's Art Gensler. And we were just chatting, he was a cool guy, just incredible, because these people, they could be, in some big ivory tower, being some kind of star architect type deal. But especially in the case of Deb, she's not like that at all. And so I guess that the leadership really has demonstrated how to approach clients and projects from a completely humble way, and just everybody kind of operates in that vibration, if that makes sense.
So it's a top-down driven culture of relationship building. Now, do you hire for people who have that sort of propensity, who are a little more relationship driven, or is it that when they come into the culture, they just get immersed and they get taught the way of Vocon?
Without question, we hire absolutely focused on culture and on how we think long and hard on professional expertise and talent, how really this person is really got the chops to perform and deliver on whatever task. Currently we're looking for a strategist, for instance, a workplace strategist. And it's a really difficult position to fill because these people often, orbit in the environment of the big consulting firms and command crazy salaries. And to ask them to come to the design world, they really have to have a passion for this. But the first thing we filter, even beyond just crazy talent and expertise, is the culture. Is it a good culture fit? Does this person think about the team first and about the users first and them last, so to speak? I mean, that approach, I think without exception, that's what we look for in every individual. So it has to be a team player. I mean, otherwise you can have a genius that working in the corner and you still won't be able to get that genius out, because this is a very collaborative industry. I mean, we all have to be able to work together and go through what it takes to build a building. I mean, it's an almost impossible task, right? To be able to build something that's beautiful, that has great air quality, that's great for the users, that is under budget, that is on time. I mean, it's an almost impossible demand. We're almost that's why architects, we're dreamers, but we're also very grounded and rooted in reality. That's that balance, tightrope walk that we need to do every day. And we need team players for that. I mean, we can't have people just, thinking about their egos or whatever. We're a very egoless firm. I mean, one of the cool things, it's called Vocon. It's not called Deb. The firm is very much team first firm.
I love that tightrope you just described. I mean, you've got the art, you can't sacrifice beauty. You're an architect. Well, you can't ignore beauty. You can't walk away from beauty. But then you have all these other practical aspects, and you have the needs and wants and desires and aspirations of your client as well. So, you're juggling 50. It's not like there's 3 balls in the air. It's more like there's 50 or 100 balls in the air. So
many of them. Yeah.
My hat is, perpetually off to you guys. Now let's talk about sustainability goals. Vocon has set some pretty ambitious sustainability goals, including achieving net zero by 2030. And specifically, I want it verified by the Science Based Targets initiatives. Are you able to share some of the key strategies and milestones that Vocon is implementing in order to reach this target, and how these efforts are influencing your design approach across various projects?
Absolutely. This is a good segue, because from what we were just talking about delivering buildings that are beautiful and yet meet all of the functions, this is what performance brings. So this is what I've been trying to communicate to the firm and to our clients, to my teammates, is that this is why I'm so centered on performance, because it's not sustainability, it's just great design. And when you bring performance to the front, then everybody's thinking about how can we make this the most cost effective, the best materials, the best air quality, the best space for the occupants. And it all adds up into a beautiful design that's functional, that's affordable. I mean, it's just all connected. And so this notion of thinking about good design as high performing design, this is a message that I'm trying to bring. And so it's not a conversation about sustainability necessarily speaking, it's reframing what that really means. And so back to your question, we here at Vocon have taken a pretty aggressive stance to stick to the net zero commitments by 2030. And as you're well aware, there's scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. And we're working really hard with, and also partnering with other consulting firms like Blue CSR and others to help us get there. And it's a difficult road. I won't sugarcoat that one, because there are so many factors. First of all, the carbon conversation is a tough conversation to have because there are so many angles there. I mean, some people believe that just paying your carbon credits or your carbon tax or whatever you want to call it, puts you in a place of, okay, well, I'm fine. I paid for my carbon credits. Now I'm a net zero company or something like that. I don't necessarily believe that. Like, of course, it's great that people are offsetting their carbon by paying for carbon credits, but that's not the end all be all. And that's not the goal. I mean, if everybody just had money to, like pardon their bad deeds or whatever, that wouldn't really add up to the society and the place that we want to create, right? So what we're trying to change is the behaviors, the way that we perform and deliver projects. And all of that is rooted in, again, back to the word performance. Like we're all thinking about how can we better deliver projects. And so it's all very connected, very much connected. And so with the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, what we're looking at very closely is how are our facilities operating, right? What is every single line item of expense that we have as a firm, and how we vote with our dollar, right? Everybody votes with their dollar. So whatever we're investing money, time, and energy in is what the direction that we're headed as a practice, right? So that makes us analyze everything from the cutlery, from making sure that it's compostable. And by the way, we do have a very strong composting practice here in the Cleveland office, and it's led by a team of incredible individuals. Oh, I love my teammates, by the way. But it's down from the very, compostable fork all the way up to like, well, how is this mega project going to get delivered, and what are the different performance metrics that we're tying to it? So it has everything to do with inside the operations and outside, how are we delivering our projects? And that's where we're trying to get. I'm not saying here that we're going to be the most net zero firm by 2030, because there are other firms doing incredible work out there that have, decades of experience ahead of us. But we're certainly going in the right direction. We all have kind of our antennas, tuned to that tune, so to speak.
The ship is pointed in the right direction for sure.
No question.
So one last question along that line. Vocon has over, I believe I read 50 projects achieving recognized certifications like LEED, Fitwell. I mean, first of all, that's an amazing achievement, and hats off to the firm. It's just extraordinary that over a relatively short period of time, that many projects would get done. But let's talk about tangible results from those certifications. Can you give me any example or examples of project where those certifications have clearly yielded tangible benefits for the building user?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Owner.
There are a couple of things that come to mind. First of all, credit goes to all the teams and all the people who have worked before me on getting all of those, not only certifications, but all those beautiful buildings built. Like the one that comes to mind right now is the PwC San Francisco office, which got LEED Platinum. I think it was one of the first of its kind at the time. And the other day, one of the lead designers on the team gave us a presentation on the project, and it was, oh my gosh, it was beautiful. I mean, more than the certification itself, it was just the joy of the space, the way that the colors and textures and materials were arranged. I was blown away. And I didn't even know that we had that project at Vocon, and people are not necessarily talking about it all the time, but it was amazing. So I think that more than the certifications themselves, it's whether you pursue a certification or not, it's designing to those standards, designing to that level, being incredibly mindful about the material selection, about the air quality, about the air tightness of your building, about the envelope, about the marrying of the mechanical systems with your envelope, and thinking about your wall section, thinking about your assemblies, thinking about where the products are sourced. What's the carbon emission of a given material that you're working with? Thinking about all these elements combined really bring projects that just sing, and the people want to stay. People want to stay in places like there's great data starting to come out, because a lot of this is somewhat hard to measure and quantify. But employee retention studies have been starting to come out of the Pacific Northwest in some of these beautiful mass timber buildings that are getting built all over the place. And
Yep.
people just want to hang out there. People just want to stay there. So employee retention is through the roof. People want to live, breathe, and work in places that are beautiful and uplift the human soul, the human spirit. And that's not, it's not fake. It's very real. The human has a connection to beautiful, clean things. And that's starting to bear out in the studies. Now, it's still a bit of a wild west. So as long as you keep your kind of antennas tuned to clean materials, great air quality, I think you'll be in good shape. So I hope that answers your question. I don't have any very specific instances other than the one I mentioned. And also the Cleveland Foundation is a great example too, where there was a lot of effort put forth by the team to design in mass timber and to have a lot of beautiful wood finishes throughout the interiors, and very community-centered space that's really serving the greater Cleveland community. That project is a great example, and the collaboration or a community center right next to it. Those two projects in tandem that are both heavily Vocon involved have led in amazing results about community involvement. Actually, the community center just opened a couple of weeks ago, and there was this big celebration, and the mayor was there, and Leanne Curry, who's this incredible force of nature. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she leads the Cleveland Foundation, and she's just taken it to the next level in terms of how can we engage the community. She and Deb are excellent friends and partners in crime, and they do a lot of work together. And it's great to see these leading voices just, bring a next level of design expectation to the built environment. And that's what makes me pretty excited and happy to come to work every day, because there are so many challenges, like we spoke about, like getting a building built, getting anything built is an almost Herculean, like impossible task. But we show up here and then you see the results and you're like, well, it's absolutely worth it.
Introducing Solera Reserve from Advanced Glazings, making luxury homes even more beautiful and more healthy using cool, controlled natural light.
Yeah, it's an incredible intellectual and organizational challenge, but I can't imagine anything that could be much more satisfying for sure. It was cool that you mentioned about the retention, Roberto, because I've been waiting for a while to start seeing, some good data come out on retention and on sick days and things like that, like attendance. I'm guessing that both of those things are going to increase as we literally build better buildings. So I'm glad the data is starting to come out. I'm going to have to get a couple of shows to have that conversation.
Let's get together at some point after the show and chat about some of those researches that's coming out. And the other thing I'll say on that note is that, we'll save that for later. We'll save that for
Okay.
It's going to...
Well, we've come to the point in the show where I have to ask my $1 million question. So there's one question that I ask every single guest, and I ask them to answer it from whatever perspective that they see fit. And that question is, what makes a great building?
What makes a great building? Okay, the first thing that I think about is my son and my daughter. That she'll be born in July. My wife,
congrats. That's wonderful.
Thank you. But that's the very first thing I think of is if I was designing for the people who I love the most, my wife and kids and my family, what kind of building would I want them to be in? Ask yourself that question and the answer becomes really clear. You're not going to be specifying, poisonous materials that will hurt their respiratory systems or hurt their endocrine disruptions or anything like that. Do your research. You'll find the things that are the cleanest and the most affordable, and you'll put it together with them in mind. So always go back to the user. Think about the user. Think about what their daily lives are like, and everything will come together from there. Even if you're just doing a ground-up building or a shell, if you're a core and shell architect, think about the user first. Think about what that building will be from the inside out, and the answers kind of start coming into place that way. I hope that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. No, that's fantastic. Before we go, Roberto, do you have any exciting announcements or any news that you want to share or anything that you'd like to promote before we go?
No, what I would say is, if you're passionate about making the world a better place, come to Vocon. We're hiring aggressively right now. There's a lot of exciting things happening and a lot of cool projects coming our way. So if you want to make a difference, come to Vocon, reach out to me, and we'll put you in touch with the right folks. And on a personal note, like I said, I'm expecting a daughter. So that's the best news in the world. That's the biggest announcement. And my wife and I are building a shed out in the backyard. Big announcement.
Fantastic. I couldn't be more happy for you. That's wonderful news. Congratulations, Roberto. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for making time to come and speak with me today.
Likewise, Joe. I think next time I'm going to have to interview you because I'd love to learn how your career path and how you got to where you are. So
you got yourself a deal. Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to chat about that. But let's stay in touch for sure.
Will do. Thank you, Joe.
All right. You take care.
Bye. You too.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Better Buildings for Humans. For more information on the world's best light diffusing and highly insulating glass glazing, please visit advancedglazings.com.